Going with the facts, because as of this hour, there are nearly 730,000 confirmed cases of coronavirus across this country. More than 38,000 people have died. A new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll out today shows a majority of Americans support keeping the stay-at-home restrictions. In fact, 58% say they are more worried about the fallout from loosening restrictions too quickly than they are of the economic consequences. We're going to have a live report on all this from the White House in just a moment. But first, over on Capitol Hill, lawmakers say a deal for a fourth coronavirus relief package could come as soon as tonight.
We have common ground. Our CARES One package was something that we worked together in a bipartisan way, springing from that and making it more effective and stronger so that more people are benefiting from it and protected by it. I think we're very close to agreement.
I'm hopeful that we can reach an agreement, that the Senate can pass this tomorrow and that the House can take it up on Tuesday, and Wednesday we'd be back up and running.
Meanwhile, a live look now from New York. That's where Governor Andrew Cuomo will be holding his daily press briefing within about an hour. Looks a little bit different. That's because it's going to be out on Long Island. We're going to bring that to you when it happens. And then starting tomorrow, all Walmart and Sam's Club employees will be required to wear face masks. That policy switch, a response to the CDC's changing guidelines. Shoppers will also be encouraged to wear some sort of face covering. Let's go to NBC's Monica Alba. She's joining us with more on the new poll numbers we just mentioned. She's at the White House, of course. So let's get to you about the other highlights. What did you find out from these numbers?
Exactly, Alex. This really is the backdrop to the White House's decision-making this week as they look to ease restrictions in certain parts of the country, telling states that if they meet some particular criteria, they can begin to think about reopening. And as we heard from the president last night, he intends to do that and urge states to do it as soon as this coming Monday, Friday, and before that May 1st deadline. So as we look to see almost 2/3 of Americans polled in our new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll say that they are more worried that if these guidelines are lifted too soon, that could lead to an increase in cases and deaths from coronavirus, as opposed to an effect on the economy. And we look specifically to the president's handling of this pandemic so far. About 44% say they approve of what he has done, while 52% say that they disapprove of what he has done in the face of the pandemic so far. And when it comes to questions of the economy, because this is so much of what is driving the White House's decision, it looks like 45% feel the state of the economy is currently in poor shape, as compared to 22% saying it's in excellent shape. So that really is the clash that we see here between the public health emergency and the crisis and what many are feeling and sensing in terms of economic anxiety. And that is the fine line that the president continues to walk. But when asked today what she thought of his handling so far, Speaker Nancy Pelosi had some pretty harsh words and criticism for the president. Take a listen.
I'm afraid that he's going to act on the basis of what he's acted before. It's a hoax. It's magically going to disappear. He's failed in the testing and the rest, and it's a hoax, and it's going to magically disappear. That's not based on science. This isn't magical. This is scientific.
The president and his top health officials are stressing that while there are encouraging signs, we're not completely sure that we are past the peak in all of the hotspots. But as we begin to think about different economies starting back up in the states, a lot of other states that are still feeling the effects are deciding to extend their guidelines well beyond May 1st, some even going into June. But the president is trying to signal to places where cases are low that they should continue with these steps. And when asked this morning, Dr. Birx also said that while people should be making decisions on a community-to-community decision, this is no longer about the federal guidelines. Social distancing is important, but it's going to be down to counties to decide how they're going to proceed, Alex.
Okay, Monica Alba at the White House, thank you for that.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.